Hello team, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan M.S. Pierce. This is a Ukraine war live update, a live stream where I'm going to talk to you about military aid, and there is a ton to talk to you about because I haven't done one of these for a few days, and they all collect up. There's been a Ramstein meeting, actually. Has there? Yes, it has. In between the last time I spoke to you and now, I believe. It's just been crazy. Lots of videos. I've been fairly busy as well, around and about, what with Christmas coming, family, and all sorts. Apparently, the volume is too low. Is that because I'm not close enough to the microphone? Let me know if it is genuinely too low or what. Anyway, I'll just move the microphone a little bit closer to me then. And so, yeah, apologies. I didn't produce enough content yesterday, really, compared to my normal output, but I was sort of busy doing personal things and whatnot. I just want to say a massive thank you to Pierre. Pierre is someone who has been out in Ukraine off and on since the war began, helping out, particularly in the east, where he has helped base UA and in his own way rebuilding people's houses. He's just an amazing guy. I've been around Ukraine with him a couple of times. He came by because he lives in France, but his family's from the UK, so he came back to the UK and passed by sometime back, and we went to the pub together in my local pub, and that was great. Sort of out of context Ukraine thing in my local pub. Loved it. Anyway, he's just sent me a little sort of Christmas gift package. Of it, like over in Ukraine, the postal service is really revered as being this amazing service that provides people with um, with with everything they want or everything they're sent, even exceptionally close to the front lines. In fact, I think there are stories of them delivering over the front lines at certain points in the war. But anyway, he got me a Ukrainian Pochta t-shirt, which is fantastic. He's got me one of these mugs where we saw a whole bunch of mugs in the Partisan restaurant in Lviv. I was like, damn, I forgot to buy one. And he's got me one, which is just beautiful. It's like really nice mug for my tea. That says apparently, is it burn bright? I think it's from a song, and that's the Kremlin on there. So that's fantastic. So thanks, Pierre. Freaking love you, my man. And then just finally, I have, where have I put it? I've got a little a patch to put on my patch. Oh, here it is. It's literally stuck to my elbow. I've got a Donbassonia patch to put on my patch display. So here goes. Get my patch display out, put it on there, slap that in, and I'm hopefully going to get some more. So it's gone pride of place there. Got our Car for Ukraine patches there. A couple more. Now we're doing the Car for Ukraine again. And all the ones that I have up there as well. So totally cool. I'm looking forward to donating to the Car for Ukraine campaign and getting some more patches there as well. I'll talk about the Car for Ukraine at the end of the video, the latest fundraiser. Anyway, so that's cool. I do apologize. I'm not wearing a Christmas jumper. I'll put that right tomorrow. It is, it's very short-sighted of me. Okay, so that's that done. That's the official ceremony, as someone mentions in the live chat. Is the official ceremony to get all that stuff up and running, and you're going to look forward to me slurping for my tea in a very noisy way into the microphone in the future using this beautiful mug. It is just, it's absolutely lush. Okay. Lots and lots to go through. My goodness, it's been crazy in terms of funding, in terms of military aid. So we're going to go through it all. Strap yourselves in, guys. It is going to be a bit of a long one because there's so much stuff to talk about. And I could talk about so much more. It's all going off. You've got peace talks in Miami involving people like Steve Witkoff. He needs a video just on him and his connections to Russia, and my idea that he's fairly compromised. And then you have, God, what's going on? American politics is just insane. The Epstein files. I need to do a video on the Epstein files and the absolute debacle that is the release of those 119 pages of documents entirely blacked out. Just incredible. Anyway, there you go. But we won't do that because now it is time for some military aid. Okay, let's change things around. Oh no, look at that, just a blank screen. I'll tell you what I do like. I do like a bit of this, but it's a bit busy. But I think I'll bring it up now just to give you a sense of, yeah, it's Ukrainian Christmas. It is a bit busy, so that's not going to be my my permanent one. Right, okay. So we are going to look first of all at funding. Okay, here's the funding. Zelensky met Belgian Prime Minister Bart de Wever and received a positive signal on Ukraine's future funding. So, okay, this all happened. He went to Brussels. Zelensky, he made some speeches. I think he tried to look people in the eye and say, you know, if we don't get this funding, we are going to be screwed, and we're not going to be able to build our drones at the rates that we are essentially, it's going to be a bit of a disaster. He warns that without the new funding by spring, Ukraine will be forced to drastically cut drone production and will lose long-range strike capability. He also revealed that some air defense systems are already out of missiles. So that's a bit of a revelation. But essentially, the whole economy and really the country would have collapsed without that kind of degree of funding. He says, I've got one aim: to get an answer for the question, what will the United States of America do if Russia comes with aggression again? I mean, that's a big question, isn't it? So asks Zelensky. Yeah, and there are some, okay, so then what happened is that Ukraine's received this $90 billion over 2 years of funding from the EU. This, as I've mentioned to you before, is coming from the EU budget in some way. I think there's still a little bit of confusion as to exactly how it's going to be repaid. And some people saying that it's going to be repaid from frozen Russian assets in some way. Other people saying that it doesn't have to be repaid by Ukraine unless Ukraine are paid by Russia and Russia do pay them reparations, then they repay the loan. But otherwise, is it coming from, is it borne out by all of the EU member states that are involved? Remember, 3 opted out and were exempted. So there's a bit of free riding going on there. And I think that's highly controversial. But some people are really denigrating the EU over this. Some people really attacking Belgium. I know I have Belgian viewers who sit on both sides of the fence on that one. Some people aren't huge fans of Bart de Wever. There are explanation videos on YouTube out there as to exactly why his position was as it was. And it does seem to be somewhat justified. So it's very easy to attack Bart de Wever and the Belgians. We need to be careful with that. The end result, as far as Ukraine is concerned, not the EU, but as far as Ukraine's concerned, I think is even better than giving them all of the frozen Russian assets. Although they are short by a third still of what they would need over the 2 years. They were talking about 135 billion. So that's 45 billion short by getting 90 billion. But then there are still, France still holds 18 billion of frozen Russian assets. You got the Swiss, you got the British holding an absolute bunch, you got the Canadians and the Japanese, and then of course you still got everything in Euroclear and the EU as a whole. All of those frozen Russian assets still exist and are still frozen, and they can still be drawn upon effectively. So although what they've effectively done is punted the decision over the assets into the long weeds, right? And we can deal with that later. And you might think that that's a bit of either capitulation or a sign of weakness or so on and so forth. Actually, and there are reads on that. So some people are saying the US is going to look at the EU and see the EU as weak because they weren't able to use the frozen Russian assets. Actually, the US didn't want them using that because they wanted access to that. But Anders Nielsen, for example, states that actually this is the EU showing themselves to be strong. We have funded the Ukrainians. You haven't done that. We've done that now. We're taking on this problem. We're standing up tall. We're showing unity and strength. And there's still 210 billion euros in frozen Russian assets, or however much it is, depending on who you speak to, and all these nations can still continue to cream off the profits and use that to underwrite loans to Ukraine. And so, from Ukraine's point of view, they're in a good place, right? 90 billion, brilliant, got that, and all of those assets are still able to be used at some point to help us. So don't think that this is, particularly controversial and weak of the EU. I'm still undecided whether it's ultimately suboptimal, but from Ukraine's point of view, I mean, because what the EU seems to have done is moved the burden of the 90 billion. Okay, it was going to be more than that, but the burden of the 90 billion is now not on frozen assets, but is on the EU itself. So that's a negative from the EU point of view, but that's not a concern for Ukraine, right? If we're being quite brutal about it. Now, what this has led to is the UK coming out and saying, well, actually, we are not happy to give our frozen Russian assets, or the frozen Russian assets under the British jurisdiction, to Ukraine if the EU's not going to do that. We have those same worries. We want to do it in coordination with the EU, Canada, and Australia, but it remains committed to the £3 billion pounds in annual military aid, and will fast track £2 billion. So there is still a lot of aid going from the UK, but there you go. So yeah, they obviously, Ukraine still need further financial assistance from other countries outside the EU. Yeah, that's exactly right. And that's where Canada, Japan, UK, Australia, they can step up, especially if they have access to frozen Russian assets. But again, you get this argument as to whether there is an advantage to not giving them the assets as a whole, but to cream the profits off because it's more sustainable. And then you're not so susceptible to legal challenges. And then at the end of the war, you can use those assets as a whole to pay to give to Ukraine for reparations. So I think there are benefits. Anyway, cleverly, or maybe not cleverly, obviously, because Macron is very big on this sort of stuff. He has said, quote, Ukraine, when attracting a €90 billion loan from the European Union, will have to give priority to purchasing weapons from the manufacturers of EU countries and Ukraine. And that is absolutely right, good and proper. That money is coming from the EU. It's not coming from the United States. That money shouldn't be going to the US to buy weapons if those weapons can be bought within Europe. And if it can't be bought within Europe, Europe needs to get on and make those things so that they are not in any way dependent on the United States. And that's just a strategic positioning from, necessary positioning from the EU, in my opinion. So that comes as absolutely no surprise. Now, something else that's happened over the last week or so is this. So UK threatens court action against Russian businessman Roman Abramovich. Roman Abramovich is a Russian oligarch who owned for many years Chelsea Football Club and took it from kind of a middling top tier team to be right at the top. Then the war started and he was forced to divest it, and it's been challenged, and it's been... If you watch Premier League football, you might notice that Chelsea still play with no sponsors on the front. They've got this bare shirt, essentially, that has no sponsors on the front, and that's kind of weird still. I think it's all connected to the sale of the club and so on and so forth. Anyway, it was, I think, dictated by not dictated, probably wrong word. It was regulated, whatever, by the UK government that money from the sale of the club, as Roman Abramovich is a sanctioned oligarch, has to go to Ukraine. And it hasn't happened yet. And it's been 4 years into the war. So now the Labour government have come out and said, right, we're getting a little pissed off with this. You need to sort this out now. If not, we're going to take you to court. So the UK has threatened court action against Abramovich over the Chelsea sale. Starmer has announced that the UK is now taking steps to unlock funds from the sale of Chelsea, which Abramovich sold in 2022 after being sanctioned by the UK following Russia's special military operation. And I think it's, here it is, to the tune of £2.5 billion, right? Nearly $3.4 billion. So imagine that money as well from the UK going to Ukraine. So 2.5 billion in proceeds have since been frozen in a UK bank account. Abramovich had pledged to spend the money in supporting the victims of Ukraine war. UK government's wanting that to go to Ukraine now. So, watch your space. That's a good bit of money. And I'm sure the Ukrainians will be like, yeah, thank you very much. Germany's allocated 70. So just in terms of general funding in this section, Germany's allocated 70 million euros to support decentralized energy and heating. The funds will help up to 2.6 million people access heat, water, and power amid intensified Russian attacks on energy infrastructure. Take, for example, Odessa at the moment is in a desperate situation. Equipment will include hybrid generators, pallet systems, and solar battery units. So good stuff there from Germany. And then we hear today, as Zelensky's in Portugal, meeting with the Portuguese leader. Portugal has transferred 600,000 euros to support the energy sector of Ukraine and is attracting its companies that have experience and technology. As for defense, Portugal plans to strengthen military and economic assistance to Ukraine, in particular through investments in the defense industry, the purchase of ammunition and equipment. The countries will also develop economic cooperation and joint investment projects. In fact, we've got another joint drone project that I'll talk to you about later from the point of view of Portugal. Latvia has allocated 200,000 euros to support Ukraine's energy sector as well. Okay, so that's the kind of funding side of things. We're now going to move into the general sort of aid, pieces of equipment and whatnot, coming predominantly from Europe, it seems, but also we're going to be talking about Australia. This looks like some troll here. Britain going to shit, send all those Islamic immigrants first in your wars. I'll tell you what, you're not British, obviously, so I wouldn't suggest you tell me my country's going to shit, sunshine. I live here and I quite like it. Thank you very much. So anyway, whatever, Trevor. Null Reports says Italy will shift toward mostly civilian aid to Ukraine in 2026. Now, this sounds a little bit frustrating to me, or I'm frustrated by this. Italy will shift mostly towards civilian aid in Ukraine in 2026, says Alfredo Mantovano, Under Secretary to Prime Minister Meloni. A new bridge decree expected in by December the 29th, will prioritize energy support such as generators and power supply tools, which is obviously good. They need that stuff due to recent infrastructure devastation. I'm hoping that this isn't the Italians really pivoting away in a kind of Hungarian sort of way, or Viktor Orban sort of way, and doing maybe the bidding of, or maybe thinking they're doing the bidding of Trump's administration, or trying to help Ukraine less in material, equipment sort of ways, military equipment sort of ways. I mean, they have a somewhat compromised government with the coalition, with 2 out of the 3 parties overtly pro Russia compared to Giorgia Meloni. But yeah, I mean, having said that, they've just got a bunch of military equipment, the old Centauro B1s and these VCC armored personnel carrier variants of the M113. They have given an absolute bunch of stuff recently, which is going to be very well received, or is being well received. Italian here on Blue Sky says, I'm not happy with this decision, but it's to be expected because the current government has a strong pro-Russia component. There you go. La Liga, but also you've got Forza as well, the former Prime Minister Berlusconi's party. He's now died, but Berlusconi himself was a very close friend of Putin. They exchanged gifts and all sorts, and so his party is in coalition with La Liga, with Matteo Salvini, the deputy prime minister, who is massively anti-Ukraine and pro-Russia. So anyway, and also opposition parties are gaining some little momentum with their 4-piece approach. So I guess they want to play safe for little domestic gain. So yeah, that's the state of play in Italy at the moment. I don't know why these are all re-rendering. This is annoying because I did this earlier. Okay, so now we're getting on to Australia. So the last of the Australian Abrams tanks have arrived in Ukraine. Now, I was hearing that, was it 87% of the American Abrams? So the American Abrams are the later variants than these are older Abrams, but the American Abrams tanks that went, I think 87% of them being attrited away now. So they have very few of them left working. There are only 31, weren't there, that were given originally, and that was frustrating because the US has an absolute ton of those sitting in the desert doing the square root of NAF all. So the Australians are sending 49 tanks. I don't know whether they have had to be refurbished, what level they are compared to, say, the Abrams that they've been operating previously. The first 37 tanks arrived in July, and the final 12 arrived in the past week. So that's really good. The Australians getting those to Ukraine. Ukraine still needs a steady supply of these vehicles, even though they don't use them as much in the way that you might have seen earlier on in the war. I don't know that Ukraine are ever going to be doing any kind of major counter-offensive, mounting up huge mechanized units and driving into the Russian forces. I don't know that they've got the ability or the capacity to do any of that anymore. But they still need to use tanks in different ways. They still do use them. In fact, I was showing you a video the other day of a column of Russian equipment getting absolutely shellacked by artillery and drones, and there were these almost, couldn't tell whether rockets or artillery, these flashes coming in, and you could see the projectile flash through the air, but they were far more, not quite horizontal. But I was wondering what they were, and then some people saying no, those are tank rounds. So it could have been tank rounds being used against that column as well. In which case, tanks are still being utilized, right? 49 Abrams are going to be super useful for the Ukrainians. There's no doubt about that. I was wondering, like, if I was in charge of procurement, I'd be getting these tanks probably to the brigades that have been operating the Abrams, the more updated American Abrams, because they're more likely to be similar and might have similar logistics footprints and whatnot. But anyway, good stuff from the Aussies there. Now, there was a Ramstein meeting, as I mentioned, and that brought about the Netherlands pledging 250 million euros for F-16 weapons, the UK $805 million for air defense missiles and drone turrets. Interesting. Canada, 20 million for AIM-9 missiles. Denmark, those are air-to-air missiles, I think. Denmark, 250 million for drones, aviation, and air defense. New Zealand, 15 million towards the Pearl Initiative to buy stuff from the United States and Portugal. 10 million on drones. And then Germany's done an awful lot as well. So German Aid to Ukraine says large number of AIM-9 Sidewinder missiles delivery over the next year. But actually, we've got an awful lot of stuff that Germany is involved in that we'll come to in a wee while. So yeah, here you have Ramstein meeting. Just seeing if there's any more. There's more here, actually. So let's go through this. Germany, 11.5 billion in general euros. In addition, Patriot and RST systems have already been transferred to Ukraine. UK, 600 million pounds from frozen Russian assets and its own budget to strengthen their defense. Canada, 30 million Canadian dollars for Ukrainian drones, AIM-9 missiles, supplies of electro-optical sensors and other military assistance. Netherlands, 700 million for drones, including 400 million for Ukrainian-made products. Montenegro, preparing a contribution to the Pearl Initiative and the NSATU Fund. Denmark, new contribution to Pearl with a focus on Ukraine's aviation capabilities, transferred the 29th support package for 250 million euros, drones, air defense, and support for Ukrainian aviation. Wow, so there's an absolute bunch of stuff. Estonia continues support at a level of not less than 0.25% of GDP, which is 142 million euros. Contribution to the IT coalition to the amount of 9 million euros. Obviously, much smaller countries, right? Latvia continues support at the level of not less than 0.25% of GDP, which is 110 million euros, focus on drones, electronic warfare, and Pearl. Lithuania, over 220 million in 2026 for military support to Ukraine at a level of no less than 0.25% of GDP too, including contributions to the American Pearl Initiative, the Patriot Program for Ukraine, and the Czech Initiative, and the Demining Coalition. Luxembourg, 100 million euros in 2026 for support to Ukraine. Second contribution of 15 million to Pearl. Pearl's doing well. She's having a good year. New Zealand, 15 million to Pearl. Norway, about $7 billion in total military aid next year. Contributions to support US air defense systems and the Czech Initiative. And then, just a few more here. Poland, supplies of 155mm shells, implementation of joint projects with Ukraine within the SAFE framework. Portugal, contribution to the Czech Initiative, 10 million euros for drones. And then the Czech Republic, the supply of 760,000 artillery shells has already been financed within the framework of the Czech Initiative for 2026. We're going to come on to talk about Czechia later in terms of their positioning of the new government. And there is some good news there. Okay, now moving on to Germany. So sorry, that was a lot of very quick information being thrown at you. So Germany, and yeah, so what Kevin Forst says, it's really embarrassing that Australia sent more Abrams than the US. We have 2,000 sitting in the Sierra Army Depot in North California. They would need repair, but they should have been sent. I don't disagree with you. Yeah, I think they should have sent a ton of Bradleys and tanks right at the beginning of the war. An absolute ton of them. All right, German Defense Minister Boris Pistorius announced that Germany will extend the military aid for Ukraine for the year 2026 by an additional 3 billion euros. This makes an overall support of 11.5, as we heard, billion. Wow, a new record. Joint operations in drone production has been announced as well. Additionally, Ukraine will be supplied with vast amounts of AIM-9 Sidewinder missiles from German army stocks. Wow. Now, these guys have been doing, Germany, have been doing a pretty astonishing job of stepping in when the US has kind of gone AWOL, and they really are putting their money where their mouth is. Although we can look at these things as a percentage of GDP or per capita, and obviously the figures look a little bit different. But yeah, great stuff there from the Germans. And I think Friedrich Merz is possibly, I don't know if he's using this kind of in a really cynical way, but it's presenting itself as an opportunity for Friedrich Merz to stamp his authority within the EU, I think, and take on a leadership role, which he's done. I think, you know, in the way that Angela Merkel previously did that from a German point of view. It could be that Friedrich Merz is thought, right, we need to make sure that Germany has a very strong position in the EU. We are having these threats from the AfD within Germany, and these threats from right-wing populism right around Europe. But, you know, if we stand strong and maybe try and stimulate our economy with the defense sector and defense sector spending and help for Ukraine, then you know, that could put us in a good stead. But yeah, I think Germany's position has been quite interesting. Now, Ukraine boosts defense partnership with Germany, signing a $1.2 billion euros in contracts. So in particular, 750 million euro contract, the largest artillery project, production of 200 Bogdana self-propelled howitzers on the new Zetro chassis to enhance Ukraine's artillery capability. Now, this is really important, actually, because I thought I had something else on that, and maybe I don't. But anyway, yeah, 200 Bogdanas now being built on a German chassis. So the Germans have got loads of Zetro trucks that they have given to Ukraine already. Now the Bogdana is going to be, I guess, some kind of co-production between the two. 200 million euro contract on procurement of Ukrainian-made drones. The supply of Ukrainian drones is a key priority for stopping enemy advances and increasing enemy losses. Long-term supply of spare parts for Patriot systems to enable faster repairs, modernization, and restoration of existing systems. And joint production of Lynx drones by Frontline Robotics, which is a Ukrainian company, and Quantum Systems, which is a German company, under the Build with Ukraine framework to scale tactical reconnaissance. Contract signed for uninterrupted supply of modern tactical level electronic warfare systems. So Germany doing an absolute ton of stuff there with Ukraine, working in unison with them. So that funding is helping Ukraine as well to really stimulate its own military industrial complex so it can stand on its own 2 feet. So Germany has delivered 2 Patriot air defense systems and a 9th IRIS-T system to Ukraine, according to Boris Pistorius. Quote, these deliveries, promised in August, significantly strengthened Ukraine's air defenses, he said, crediting support from Norway for making it possible. Again, Norway coming up with the goods. We've got a whole section on Norway in a bit. Now, today, I think Zelensky announced that there needs to be an investigation, or they're looking into why Odessa has been absolutely hammered over the last week. The air defense, you know, what's been going wrong there, who's been at fault for the air defense is not working so well in Odessa. But Odessa has certainly come under huge amounts of pressure from Russian missiles and drones. Have they lost a Patriot in that area? You know, what air defense systems have been lost? What are without missiles, interceptor missiles? You know, are there bad decisions being made? I don't know. I mean, you're never going to be far away from these sorts of claims. As Who's Poppin says, leaders in Odessa were corrupt. Well, you had the was it the mayor there who was got rid of recently, and some people were kind of trying to defend him, but I think that was a good thing they got rid of him. I think he had Greg Terry knew quite a bit about that, and he did some videos on how that mayor was definitely a bad apple. But anyway, staying on the topic of Germany and their support, Germany may transfer Sea Lynx naval helicopters to Ukraine, according to Militiani. So it's only the other day I was talking to you in one of my live streams about making airfix models, these little sort of glue them together and paint them models as a kid in UK. I don't know if Airfix is a company that exists outside the UK, but one of the models I made as a kid was a naval version of the Westland Lynx helicopter, and like the next day they're like, oh, a load of Sea Lynxes are potentially going from Germany to Ukraine. It's a little bit cryptic, I think, but the rumors started coming out, and then Germany is considering giving Ukraine part or all of its 21 Sea Lynx Mark 88A naval helicopters being phased out of the German Navy's aviation service. German Naval Aviation Commander Captain Broder Nielsen said. I think if you look at, I don't know if I've got the. Oh, here it is. Yeah. So Gareth Jennings here says Germany may donate some or all of its 21 soon to be retired Sea Lynx helicopters to Ukraine, per the head of Marine Flieger. Speaking ahead of delivery of the first NH-90 Sea Tigers, I think that's an Airbus helicopter, Captain Nielsen said the Lynx being replaced are not going to museums and will continue flying, quote, somewhere. When asked if somewhere is the same place as the German Sea Kings are now flying, i.e. Ukraine, he responded, yes, the Sea Kings are also still flying, so the Sea Lynx may follow. In other words, it is looking like they could go to Ukraine. Contrary to impressions, Ukraine has been very selective as to which aircraft it receives and which it refuses, with every new type requiring its own operational training and support infrastructure. At a time when manpower is critical, it is only taking types that serve its immediate requirements there where no other type can. A case in point being it did not request up to 23 recently surplus UK Puma helicopters, as it already has rotary winged air mobility well covered. The Sea Lynx remains a highly capable platform, and in the anti-shipping role especially would be a valuable asset for Ukraine in the littoral and Black Sea environments. So that is interesting. So, every new machine you take on, you need to be getting spare parts for them. You need to train up your maintenance crews, and essentially, maintenance crews are going to be working on these helicopters only, right? So are you going to pull them from other helicopters to work on these, or generally, I know they work on several different ones, possibly, but you need expertise in this helicopter to allow this helicopter to work as well as it should, and that takes training up the crews, having the logistics routes worked out, and spare parts. Hopefully they still make all the spare parts of some of these older bits of kit. It just takes a lot of work to get these things into the service of Ukraine, and if that's going to be at the expense of some other piece of kit, if it's too difficult, then obviously they can't do it. But certain areas they have just massive needs. So I presume for like mobility vehicles, they'll just take anything. Right, we're using SUVs, so yeah, of course. If you've got an APC or an infantry fighting vehicle, we'll take it. We'll take it. But when it comes to helicopters, when it takes probably a lot more to train someone to fly a helicopter than it does to drive a, I don't know, Centauro B1, for example, you're much more likely to take the Centauro B1 than you are a given helicopter. But here, if you've got 21 helicopters, that's quite a good number, so it might be worth your while doing that. But again, 21 helicopters to keep that fleet in working order, how many maintenance crew are you going to need? How many pilots and crew are you going to need? So again, it sounds great, but there are challenges that come with each new piece of equipment. Right, staying on Germany, we are seeing that Germany to Ukraine here says, according to a statement from Germany's Minister of Defense Boris Pistorius, Germany will deliver a large number of AIM-9 Sidewinder missiles from the Bundeswehr stocks, the German army stocks, in 2026. Already last year, Germany delivered in an unknown number of AIM-9L I-1 missiles to Ukraine. Although this is an old missile, it should be effective against cruise missiles and incoming drones. It's probably the missile with the highest success rate of shootdowns ever used. Absolutely. I remember playing a computer game when I was, how old would I have been? So still in Hong Kong when it first came out. Maybe 11, 12, 13, Gunship 2000, I think it was called. The old floppy disks on my dad's IBM computer. Gunship 2000. I remember playing that and like firing aim sidewinders at bloody Hips and Hind helicopters. And now, of course, we're seeing Hips and Hinds all over this theatre. So, yeah, that was what, late 80s. How some things haven't changed. You still got missiles flying against Soviet era helicopters. Okay, so just seeing yeah, as someone here says, Mads says, helicopters are famously high maintenance, properly a lot of crew required. Yeah, and that's the challenge. And if it's true that actually they're already sorted for helicopters, broadly speaking, at least mobility helicopters, you know, if these are just going to be used to move people from A to B, then they're not so interested in them. But if they have like sonar and you know, coastal and maritime capabilities that are quite bespoke and useful for the Ukrainians, then that, you know, it's going to be a different kettle of fish in it. The German-based Quantum Systems, as we heard, and Ukrainian-based Frontline Robotics have founded a joint venture company called Quantum Frontline Industries, which is to manufacture drones from Frontline Robotics for the Ukrainian armed forces in Germany. So there are two forms of localization of manufacturing. One is to build like foreign equipment in Ukraine so that it can get to the Ukrainian front line quicker, that maintenance is simplified, and that so that it's cheaper to manufacture them, and it gives Ukraine jobs and tax income and so on and so forth. But of course, it then makes these places vulnerable to get hit by to being hit by drones and missiles. So the other form of localization is building Ukrainian stuff abroad, or having Ukrainian so you build it under license, or indeed have Ukrainian factories. So in the UK, is it Mildenhall up in Suffolk, there's a 200 million pound, I think, I don't know, there's so many different currencies floating around, investment of a Ukrainian company to build Ukrainian drones, but you can also have them built under license. Anyway, this is a joint venture between Quantum and Frontline Robotics to build these drones in Germany, making the whole process safer, right? Right, going on to the UK now. We've got a bit of, I love a bit of expertise here. Just Not Good, saying, having been in the combat aviation troop, 2nd ACI in Germany, I would say that maintenance is not as difficult as some say. I flew the OH-58. We also had the UH-1 and Cobras. So that's maybe a little bit back the other way, saying, it's all right. I think, you know, I mean, it's definitely going to be challenging. The more bits of kit, the more helicopters as well. They're not like just, you know, the more mobility vehicles you have. But I mean, yeah, I don't know. I don't know if that makes much difference. But yeah, I would intuitively presume that a greater range of helicopters is a much bigger headache than a greater range of infantry fighting vehicles or mobility vehicles. Sky News reports that Britain, at the Ramstein format meeting, announced the allocation of a large air defence package for Ukraine worth nearly 685 million euros. Now, what is included here? It's announced a major air defence support package for Ukraine, investing £600 million to boost Ukraine's ability to shoot down Russian drones this winter. Defence Secretary John Healey said Kiev will receive air defence systems, missiles, and automated anti-drone turrets. I wonder if that's similar to like the German Skynex or the Cleon, whatever it is, turret that they use as a palletized version of that. So Healey co-chaired the 32nd meeting of the Ukraine Defence Contact Group, the alliance countries supporting Ukraine through the donation of military aid. So just trying to see if there's any further detail. No, yeah, automated turrets. So I don't really know what that is at the moment. Yeah, automated turrets. The UK has been quite, I think, crucial in some of these air defense innovations. The kind of Frankensams, they produce some container, like literally containers you get on a cargo ship. They've adapted containers to fire missiles, a sort of, I guess, palletized version or modular or whatever you want to call it. You can whack them on the back of a lorry, put them on a boat, whatever. So they've got some of those. They've got these Ravens and is it the Graveheart, and lots of these different like systems, some which have been entirely bespoke. Well, most of those I just mentioned have been, I think, entirely bespoke, made for Ukraine. So they've been, and they've also provided things like the Stormer, which are tracked vehicles that fire essentially star streaks. I think they are like manpads or martlets, manpads, which are also useful vehicles that we've seen video footage of them like shooting down stuff. So that's all good news. Right, Ukraine has received dozens of UK-made Ultra drones. These are drones that I've never heard of previously. Heavy logistics drones capable of flying over 1,000 kilometers with up to 150 kilograms of payload, designed for frontline resupply. Ultra is rugged, jam resistant, twin engined, and field repairable. Upgraded 200 kilogram and 2,000 kilometer versions are coming soon. I don't know what the use of having such a long distance on these, if they are resupply rather than going over the enemy front lines. I guess it means that you can just allow them to take off from way back in Western Ukraine. But anyway, really good news that the UK is working on these drones and building these for the Ukrainians. Good stuff there. So those are the Ultra drones. That is a big old piece of kit. I wonder what the advantage is. It just what the advantages of an upside down V is. We see this on a lot of drones. I wonder what the aerodynamic benefit for that is. I'm sure there's some geek in the thread that can yeah, payload can be anything. I guess it's just the focus on resupply, but if these bad boys can drop bombs, then sounds good to me, mate. Yeah, of course, good point. Yeah, these are resupply. These are, it could be a case of like, these are for resupply for bottles of water for the front line. Oh, instead of like 100 bottles of water, it turns out just put one big bomb on them and dropped it on the Russians. We've resupplied the Russians with explosives. Yeah, nice. Good stuff. Okay. Yeah, and then I suppose if you want them back, these look pretty decent bits of kit that you might want back. So 500 kilometers out, 500 kilometers back. Yeah, that is a good point. Okay, so Portugal and Ukraine have agreed to jointly produce maritime drones. So we just heard of the Germans and Ukrainians coming together for UAVs. Now we've got USVs here. Prime Minister Luis Montenegro announced Portugal is ready to scale up production using Ukraine's battlefield experience and will also share its own scientific developments to support the project. It's really interesting the other day, and I've been talking about this for years, right? The way you sell support to Ukraine is saying, actually, we're doing it for our own benefit. Just that if you've got taxpayers that aren't so into this like we are, we're like, yeah, I understand why we're supporting Ukraine. It's the right thing to do, and I want our tax money to be spent in this way, blah, blah, blah. But many people are not like that. And so Donald Tusk the other day came out and said, look, and I'm paraphrasing, but he was talking about supporting Ukraine. He said, look, really, we're doing this in a selfish way because this is protecting Poland and it's in Poland's best interest that we do this. So yeah, we're doing it for Ukraine, but really, you know, egocentrically, we're doing it for Poland. He said it in a different way, but it was that point. And actually, I think that's quite important to appealing to a certain set of any electorate that will be much more reluctant to see aid go to Ukraine because they think it should be spent on, you know, hospitals and schools and whatnot. The Netherlands has allocated 250 million euros to Ukraine for ammunition for the F-16s, as we heard. He also promised to provide Ukraine with additional defense assistance worth 700 million euros. So that's excellent from the Dutch again. They've been really, really good supporters of Ukraine. And we have the Czech initiative, Gift for Putin. So these are guys that the same guys that raised 500,000 for a Flamingo missile. Then there's all that scandal, the whole Energoatom scandal came out, and then they said, right, we're not giving it anymore. I don't know what's happened with that. They may have just ended up going, okay, we'll give it. But anyway, they've received a 4.12 million euro anonymous donation. I wish I could. I'd love to be in a position where I could do that. I'd love to be Elon Musk, right, and just go, oh, do you know what? I'm not going to spend $290 million getting Trump into government. I'm going to spend 290 million, in fact, $500 million, and I'm just going to fund the crap out of Ukraine, or like, build a factory that builds drones and just provide amazing drones using our best SpaceX technicians, so on and so forth. I'd love to be in that position. Anyway, some very kind person has donated 4.12 million euros to gift for Putin. Funds will go to 26 different projects, including combat drones, plastic explosives, training aircraft, and a Galka drone system. The initiative previously funded a rocket launcher, T-72 tank, Black Hawk helicopter. If you remember, they got a Black Hawk helicopter to Ukraine. And then, of course, that Flamingo missile that then was kind of retracted, but I don't know if that is still the case. And very important, oh no, it's not this. No, very importantly comes next, I think. Since the start of the war in February 2022, the Czech company Zaveta Bojkovice AS has, specifically its ammunition division, has supplied Ukraine with over 40,000 RPG 75mm disposable anti-tank weapons. These bad boys look like this, very kind of efficiently small bit of kit here, but that can send an RPG at someone. Last year, the company supplied Ukraine with half of its entire annual production. The first shipment of these weapons was delivered to Ukraine in the early days of the war and was received first by volunteers and reservists defending the suburbs of Kiev, who until then had been armed mainly with rifles, grenades, and Molotov cocktails. In the early days of the war, they were also used in large numbers by special forces and sabotage units, which used quad bikes at night to attack the infamous 60-kilometer long Russian convoy. Wow, rolling towards Kiev with these RPG-75Ms. Wow. So, yeah, they were using quads, evidently. That's at one time when you remember the 60-kilometer long convoy where they'd hit it at the front, hit it at the back, and then it was kind of milling around, not being able to do much. I think it ran out of fuel. They're wanting to get to Kiev, and then it was all a bit of a nightmare. And then the Bayraktar drones were having a bit of a pop at them. All very controversial. You had all the mud, and it turns out that there were people with these RPG 75Ms on the back of quads charging in and having a pop. Sounds like good fun to me, as long as you don't, die and whatnot. Since then, the battlefield has changed dramatically. The Ukrainian units have also begun mounting these on their drones. Biggest advantage of this anti-tank weapon is that it weighs only 3.2 kilograms and can be carried by any soldier. Despite its very compact dimensions and low weight, it can penetrate armor up to 300 millimeters thick. The RPG, so 300 millimeters, is a ruler. Just in case you're American or something, here is a ruler. Here's a primary school ruler. That is 30 centimeters long. That is 300 millimeters. Yeah, that is very thick. The RPG-75 is available in 3 basic versions. Basic Heat M, Thermobaric RTG, and Multi-Purpose MP, which combines a Heat and RTG. Current monthly production is approximately 1,000 of these per month. It supplies them around the world, though, from Europe to Asia, Middle East, and Latin America. The RPG-75 has been recently upgraded, among other things, the addition of standard rails for attaching a sight with switchable display, including night and thermal vision or a laser rangefinder. In addition, the company also manufactures hand grenades, smoke grenades, flares for aircraft and helicopters, and civilian pyrotechnic products. So, yeah, good stuff there from that Czech manufacturer. Now, we have also heard. Oh no, I don't have it here. No, I don't. Right. So the Czechs have, under Andrej Babiš, have also announced that they are going to continue the Czech initiative of providing ammunition to Ukraine. Petr Pavel and Petr Fiala, the president and the former prime minister, have come out and said they have provided 1.8 million shells to Ukraine through the Czech initiative. That will continue going forward, which is Yeah, which is really, really good news. That's super important. Especially as we hear, and I've got this coming later, that the North Koreans are still providing 40 to 50% of Russia's artillery ammunition. RMF24 report that Deputy Minister of National Defense said that the work of the transfer of the Polish MiG-29 aircraft to Ukraine concerns 6 to 8 aircraft and should be withdrawn from the Polish Army service in December. He added that it would be good to finalize the issue during Zelensky's visit to Warsaw. So Zelensky's just been to Warsaw. He's met with Nawrocki, met with a load of Polish peeps, and that seems to be happening. Nawrocki said that this does not, I don't know if I have it here. No, it said no. It says it does not interfere with the policy of Poland. So he's given it the green light. So it looks like they are going to get 6 to 8 of those. Oh, I've saved this over the wrong one. This was something else. Yeah, this is my European budget one. I had another thing on Poland there. Anyway, so Zelensky, I think that was where I had something of Nawrocki saying this is in line with our policy. So he doesn't have a problem, because what happened is Nawrocki said the announcement of these MiGs going from Poland came from the Polish Defense Ministry, and Nawrocki, who's an interesting character as president, said, "Hey, I haven't heard anything about this. No one's spoken to me about this," and he got a bit pissy about it. And then Zelensky went to Poland, met with him. They've kind of kissed and made up, and he said, "Yeah, that's fine." And now Zelensky's come out and said the issue is not the shortage of aircraft, but of pilots, so just in general. Zelensky explained the need for MiG-29s from Poland. He said training a pilot for F-16 takes 8 months to a year and a half, while on the MiG-29, Ukrainian pilots can fly immediately. In other words, there are already trained pilots, and I presume, the attrition of these planes. Okay, normally if a plane goes down, the pilot goes down with it if it's shot down, but some of these planes are going to be coming to the end of their usable life, and it's like, well, it's going to be too dangerous to keep flying this MiG-29. So to get some from Poland, they can just get straight into these planes, these pilots, and if they've got extra pilots or veteran pilots of grown up on the MiG-29s, then this is a useful plane for the Ukrainians to get hold of. They can fly it. It does some of the heavy lifting in terms of guided glide bombs and whatnot that the Ukrainians are using. So getting 6 to 8 MiG-29s and hopefully more is super useful. They can fly it immediately without additional training. Okay, and finally, we've got the Norway bit that I separated from my talk with Stephen Bandal the other day. So almost finally, this year, Romania has quietly exported to Ukraine an advanced range of domestically produced drone systems, redefining the tactical capabilities of the Ukrainian forces. They've got the Kuda, the Stingray, the Kraken, the Siren, the Spectre, the Phoenix. These are all different Romanian drones that have apparently been provided to Ukraine. I've not heard of any of these, but I mean, great stuff. Ukraine, I'm sure, will make good use of all of these. That looks like very much like a sort of FP1, FP2 style drone. Again, the upside down V there. Anyway, Romanians helping out. Now, Norway is such an important supporter of Ukraine. It really, really is. Norwegian Prime Minister Jonas Gahr Støre has said today, I can announce, this was the other day, that Norway will finance a new package worth 3.2 billion kroner to Ukraine. The package consists of weapons and ammunition for F-16s, as well as air defense missiles. We are purchasing parts of this equipment from the US as part of Pearl, so buying that from the US there. But it's also said that they are going to get hold of S-300 interceptors. These are the missiles, the surface-to-air missiles used on the old Soviet-era S-300s. That Russia still uses an awful lot of these in Ukraine. I don't know how many systems Ukraine still has. They've obviously lost some during the course of the war. But the bigger problem is getting hold of interceptors. It could well be that they don't have any interceptors left, and that could be what Zelensky was referencing when he said there are certain systems that run out of missiles. And if you don't make these anymore, no one makes them outside of Russia, where you're going to get hold of them. But Norway says it will pay for the badly needed missiles for these S-300 systems. But there are questions about where they will come from. Someone says Armenia, Egypt, Azerbaijan, Bulgaria, Kazakhstan, and Vietnam are the only countries that might be willing to part with some missiles. There was talk, other people, I think the other day was talking about, was it Morocco and Algeria, but they were unlikely to let go of theirs. So anyway, yeah, those are some of the countries that have been mentioned. Colby Babwa, in terms of Norway, states that Kongsberg has the big Norwegian defense concern has acquired the US-based Zone 5. This is one of their flagship weapons. Zone 5 is called the Rusty Dagger. It's one of their flagship products, which is one of 2 missiles that was selected for the extended range attack munition programs and provide low-cost cruise missiles for Ukraine. It's been designed essentially for Ukraine, or they've looked for weapons particularly for Ukraine. And if Kongsberg, the Norwegian concern, has acquired that US company, and Norway's really up for providing assistance to Ukraine, then they could look forward to a bunch of Rusty Daggers flying over the border. That would be great, wouldn't it? Right, okay. Before I get on with what Ukraine is doing indigenously, sort of making their own stuff, and then onto the Russian sections, a fair bit in the Russian section today. Let's just have a little bit of a thank you to all of you guys. Give my brain a little bit of a break. Richard Bennett, thank you very much for gifting your 5 ATP Geopolitics memberships. My good man, you are an ossifer and a gentleman. Thank you. Thank you to Kevin Forst, 5 ATP Geopolitics memberships. Ledgeburger with extra relish, and Stephen Bendal, good old Stephen. I spoke to him the other day. Go and check that live stream out. We had a nice little chat. That was all marvelous stuff. Thank you, Stephen, and thank you for this. Regarding Ukrainian postage service, we sent a parcel from Norway to my mother-in-law in rural Ukraine. After 4 days, it was delivered on her doorstep. Bish, bash, and bosh. There you go. So good on you, Stephen. I will wear this with reference to your mother-in-law. And there you go. So good old Luke Poshta. Happy days. Although Pierre said that was too big for me. I was like, Pierre, mate, I mean, this is what I'd say to him now. Sitting here consistently talking to people online means I'm not doing enough exercise, and my belly is burgeoning. So I'm sure, yeah, it will fit. Thank you very much to BTKB1427. Now, sometimes like the names here render in a code way and not always in a way that people have their name set up. But anyway, thank you. I've been a member for years. How do you keep saying? Yeah. I guess in some ways, sometimes I wonder if I become a bit too much like a robot, like getting this information and then giving it to you. And there's this process where it's just like I'm the conduit, and maybe I don't think enough on stuff. But actually, I do. I just think all day about Ukraine, and yeah, I probably should become a little bit more varied and interesting in my life to give it better balance. But it floats my boat and it gives me purpose. This is, I like to think that what I do matters, not from some kind of conceited position here, but that I see that what I do matters morally, which is one of the most important things to me. So that's what, one of the reasons I became a teacher was I used to work for this company, and went to uni, traveled around the world before I went to uni and did a bit more backpacking, and then came back and then worked for Enterprise Rent-A-Car in their graduate management. I was just lining the pockets of working my bollocks off, lining the pockets of these corporate overlords who, it's a private company actually, Enterprise, and the people that own the company, the tailors, they gave money to the Republican Party, and I was like, oh, I'm not really a big fan of that. So I want to do something that's more meaningful. So then went into teaching, then got multiple sclerosis, came out of that, and ended up. I've always been sort of writing and blogging alongside of doing all these things, and I've written a whole bunch of books. but there's a very strong moral theme to my writing. You know, I'm writing literally about moral philosophy a lot as well. And then I sort of ended up doing this because I was doing my ATP, Atypical Philosopher videos. I've got another channel, which is my philosophy of religion channel. And then I started doing some videos on Ukraine, and loads of people watching them. It's like, oh, you guys are as obsessed as I am. And then I thought, right, I'm going to have to split this out. And now I've ended up doing this, which essentially, this is my job, right? But it's a job that I love doing because I'm obsessed with this, and I just get to talk to you guys about exactly what I want to talk to you about, and stuff that really matters, which is truth, anti-disinformation, helping Ukraine, and also all the political stuff, which I also think matters because I think, you know, obviously I think I'm telling the truth, because otherwise I wouldn't believe what I believe if it wasn't true. So it's prima facie obviously going to be the case that I think I'm telling the truth, as we all do. Many of us do. Hopefully there aren't too many people that just spend their lives lying overtly, knowing that they're lying. Donald Trump's one of them, I think. But so then, therefore, what I do in reporting news matters to me, and that's okay. What keeps me grounded and sane is that I think this is important. And I think, to me, geopolitically, the war in Ukraine is one of the most important things on earth at the moment, along with disinformation. I think our struggles with being able to unpick truth from untruth is a huge threat to humanity going forward. And when you think about things like climate change, when you think about things like, you know, vaccination and politics in general and the war in Ukraine, I actually put disinformation and information as a bigger problem, as a bigger challenge than the war in Ukraine, because the war in Ukraine is contingent upon the information war. And if we sorted out the information war, then the war in Ukraine would arguably have been sorted out earlier than it has been, or is being, because the problem in the United States, for example, in the political domain with Ukraine, is that the people who are against Ukraine don't have a firm grasp of reality due to the power of disinformation. And so, honestly, I think one of the single biggest threats to humanity going forward is information, the information war that we are all involved in. And it's not just an interstate war, it's like corporations, algorithm, you know, Elon Musk is creating Grokpedia, like an alternative to Wikipedia, which is like a Nazi endorsing, like fact denying bunch of arse. And you're like, that is part of the information war, where, you know, he is stacking the odds against truth. And that is, it enrages me, it depresses me, and it makes me think, well, I've got to do something about that. And so this is just my little domain of doing something about that. And therefore it kind of matters. It matters to me, but there's a mattering to this, where I'm not just going to work and, I don't know, sticking a label on a bottle in a factory, although that's important, right? And it allows those things to be sold and being part of the economy, and etc. But in a more abstract way, this kind of matters in what I perceive as the biggest challenges to humanity. And so the way I keep sane is by having a really strong purpose to what I'm doing. I hope that doesn't sound too overly freaking grandiose and pompous and with my head up my own arse. But I genuinely, that drives me. Thank you to Niels Clement. I really appreciate that, mate. Gifting 10 ATP Geopolitics memberships. Thank you, mate. Really do appreciate that. Okay, I'll get back to these in a little while. Sorry for that diversion, but it's a little bit of like what goes on in my head. I should get quite emotional talking about that as well. Like, one thing about multiple sclerosis, though, is that you get really emotional really easily. It is a symptom of MS. So I can watch adverts, like a Christmas advert, right, on TV, and I'll be like crying. I'm like, are you serious, mate? Are you serious? Like, you're 49 years old, like you've been around a block a few times, and you're crying at some kind of twee advert. Jesus, mate, sort it out. So yeah, I've got to watch myself with my MS, like over emotion, connection to emotion and whatnot. But I get emotional talking about things that matter. So anyway. enough of that rubbish. Okay, let's then get back to military aid and whatnot. We are going to go to the section on Ukraine's indigenous defense military industrial complex. And we're going to talk about, we're going to start with Ukraine now mass producing motors, says Euromaidan that make drones hit 400 kilometers an hour as a race between jet powered Shaheds and the interceptors that take them out heats up. Motor G churns out, get a load of this, 100,000 plus motors monthly, making it one of the world's largest producers outside of China, according to Brave One. Now, this is really, really good news. Like, this is exactly the kind of scale production that we're talking about with regard to making weapons. And of course, making weapons, it is making all of the components go into the weapons, right? You can have the ability to scale, produce like 1,000 drones a day, 1,000 FP1s a day. Like, we got a factory that can make 1,000 FP1s a day. Brilliant. But if they can only make 100 motors a day, then your big freaking drone factory doesn't mean jack, because they need to make 1,000 motors a day. So actually, you need the scaling up necessarily, obviously, has to exist right throughout the process, the chain. And to see that this company, it's a Ukrainian company, is making 100,000 plus motors a day, and these motors, I don't know if all of the motors can, but certainly some of the motors can hit 400 kilometers an hour, then that is awesome. Okay, then in the same kind of context, the Defense Ministry has increased deliveries of interceptor drones to the Defense Forces to almost 950 units per day in December. 950 units of interceptor drones. So that's great. That's a Ministry of Defense. Now, it's a bit like lacking of some context here, because or further details, like the Defense Ministry's increased deliveries of interceptor drones. Are they only Ukrainian produced drones? Are there more drones on top of that are coming from abroad? So on and so forth. Now, Ukrainian developers have unveiled the Bullet, which is a jet-powered interceptor drone designed to take down Shaheds, helicopters, and other low-speed aerial threats. It can hit speeds of 450 kilometers an hour, so this is great. That's fast enough to outrun a jet-powered Shahed drone, I think. So this is a jet-powered interceptor. That is a fairly sizable bit of kit, though, so it's not going to be like super cheap. I presume that's a more expensive drone to make than these, but I don't know. These are much smaller. Maybe the range is a lot lower than these Bullet drones that probably have larger ranges. But yeah, they look a pretty decent bit of kit. Another new Ukrainian drone is the Rex bomber drone from veteran-owned and operated Armor Drone. Rex can operate as a complete reconnaissance strike system and can carry 2 to 8 bombs with a total capacity of 10 kilograms. In other words, these can acquire the targets by doing a bunch of recce, and then say, right, we found that target. We don't have to dial in that target to someone else. We can just drop these bombs on them ourselves. So bish bash bosh, there you go. Bang, 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 bang. Excellent. And thermal gimbals on there, so thermal imagery capabilities as well, with a range of 45 to 60 kilometers. Various configurations and sizes of munitions can be carried. These can be dropped individually or in a salvo. And I don't know if that's 60 kilometers range, meaning it returns, because I presume these then return, so 120 kilometer range maybe as a total. Doves of Freedom. I've not heard of Doves of Freedom before. I mean, goodness me, I wonder how many drone manufacturers there are in Ukraine. They are excited to announce Doves of Freedom. We are moving away as much as we can, from Chinese parts. From now, all our flight controllers, electronic speed controllers, motors, as well as spools of fiber optic are made in Ukraine. Our mission is to provide quality FPV drones. We will not downgrade to save a few bucks per drones. But if we find a Ukrainian-made part of either same or higher quality, so they're not just getting Ukrainian parts, like, irrespective of the quality, it has to be at least the same or better quality than the Chinese equivalents. But if they can find those, then they will use the Ukrainian parts. We will do the change. Our goal is to make drones 100% made from Ukrainian parts. And I guess if you're a Ukrainian manufacturer, or I guess, well, if you want to start up a business in Ukraine at the moment, probably what you're going to want to look at is, what do the Chinese make that go into drones that we can make ourselves, or into weapons or whatever, and just pick something that everyone seems to get from China and say, we're going to make that ourselves. And it may be more expensive than Chinese, but there will be a demand for that from within Ukraine. So if you want a startup idea, just pick something that the Ukrainians haven't yet started to build that the Chinese do, and then move to Ukraine and try not to get like bombed and stuff. No reports, I don't mean to be flippant, says Ukraine has finally revealed the cruise missile, the Bars cruise missile, in public imagery. So we've talked a lot about the Bars missile, but oh Jesus, oh Christ, you can't hear that because I haven't got the audio on for you guys, but my goodness. That's a video. I thought it was a picture. Ukraine has revealed the Bars. If I can turn that off. There we go. In public imagery, a long-range strike weapon already being used against Russian forces, originating as a program officially acknowledged in April alongside systems like Peklo and the Paliantsia. These are kind of drone missiles. These are these hybrid missiles. Some of these are. I don't know. The Bars, I think, is. I think it has. I don't know. Anyway, we'll find out. Bars had until now never been shown visually. Photos released by the Museum of the Russia-Ukrainian War show its classic mid-wing design, twin-tail layouts, and a small jet engine mounted above the fuselage for simpler production and easier engine sourcing. So here it is. That is the Bard's long-range strike weapon. Interesting. They didn't call it a cruise missile or a drone. Long-range strike weapon. So the Bars is believed to have a range of 700 to 800 kilometers, with a warhead likely in the tens of kilograms, but possibly around 100 kilograms. Produced by a private Ukrainian company, details on exact specs and the maker remain unconfirmed. Reliable insider info suggests that Bars is now in mass production and operational use, with reports of simultaneous strikes using around 100 Bars in a single salvo. I wonder how much, how often the Ukrainians are hammering the Russians with stuff that we don't hear about. We don't see the videos of. I often talk about this, don't I? Which is, is it OPSEC? Is it the fact that the Russians are really tight on their own social media now, and all these apps are getting banned? And it's very difficult for the Russians to upload information. Is it, what is the reason why we don't always, or is it air defenses? So then there have been a couple of reports recently that suggest that Russian air defenses are a lot better than people have been given them credit for being. And a lot of the drones going across the front line, across the borders, are taken out by air defense. Some claims that, for every one drone that reaches an oil refinery, 10 have been shot down, which is that's really challenging. So when you're thinking, well, that's a 200,000 pound drone that's hit into that refinery, yeah, look at the damage it's done. Actually, no, that is if that's 200,000, then that's $2 million worth of drones being shot down, and that one that's 200,000 has got through. So actually, that drone is really effectively a drone that costs $2.2 million. Because 10 of them have got shot down. And so there needs to be, I think, some serious work on degrading the air defenses across the border in the same way they've done around Crimea. I've told you this 100 times, but just saying it again, the Ukrainians, I think it's one thing is scaling up to maybe overcome the air defenses. That's a bit inefficient. They need to work really systematically on degrading Russian air defenses. And I think it's interesting that this week we saw two S-300 launchers getting taken out in Belgorod, and that's exactly what I'm talking about, right? Yeah, we want to see that times 10. That needs to happen an awful lot. That then provides just suddenly taking two launchers out in Belgorod. You've suddenly got a gap in Belgorod. Quick, fly all our drones over where we shot those S-300s down. But yeah, they definitely need to be doing both scaling and degrading, obviously. Right, moving on. Yeah, I'd see, Michael, this is something I've been thinking about a lot, and you've heard me talk about this quite a bit, which is instead of wasting those drones, they should be used on the front line. Yeah, because they're not going to get shot down on the front line. It's just simply not going to get shot down. So if you're firing drones at an oil refinery, I mean, this is a classic calculation that I'm sure they're making, because we're actually now seeing FP2 drones being used on the front line. And they've clearly, but I mean, I've talked about this for a couple of years, that they should be using drones on the front line, as the Russians occasionally do, or quite often use, Shahed drones to hit very close to the contact line. You can't shoot them down. You don't have the air defenses on the contact line, so they are just going to generally be pretty successful. So if they're costing, I don't know, maybe it's not a $200,000 drone, maybe it's like a $50,000 drone, and 90% of them getting shot down going across a border. Whereas if you use them on a contact line, 0% of them get shot down, or like 10% of them get shot down. I'll be like, yeah, we want to be using those. All of those that we're producing, let's use them in Pokrovsk. Let's use them in Halaiplay. Let's use them around Liman. Let's use them around Vovchansk, and just absolutely obliterate the Ukrainians, but the Russians, sorry. But then, that those are still pretty expensive munitions to be using as frontline munitions. I don't know. I just think there's probably a pretty good case for that to happen. Anyway, I digress. Stop digressing me, or something. It's not really a term. Right. Melchior says, when do you think frozen Russian assets money will be used to help Ukraine? Do you? Yeah. Okay. Let's have a sidebar here. So, good question. I don't know. I could foresee this as money that gets dispersed to Ukraine after the end of the war. The actual frozen Russian assets, as long as the profits are being creamed off and used, which they are. Like we just heard, the UK is using frozen Russian assets profits to help fund some of their aid. Like I think they are consistently being used. The Europeans are doing this all the time, and that's obviously sensible, right? That if there isn't too much of a legal issue of creaming off the profits, then you got your taxpayers are like dutifully paying their taxes, and then and your electorate is a wide variety of people, and you say, well, we're going to use $1 billion of your taxpayer money funded income to spank it over in Ukraine. A lot of people are going to be like, well, that sucks, don't like you. But if we say we're helping Ukraine with $1 billion, and actually that's being funded by frozen Russian assets profits, everyone's like, well, yeah, sounds good to me. It's not my money. That's cool. That's the Russians' money, and we all kind of understand that the Russians are bad guys in the main. So I think everyone's up for using the frozen Russian assets profits, and that could be one of the arguments as to why you're not seeing the actual frozen Russian assets being given, because then it stops that being able to be an option. Like the Belgians, they take tax from the assets, and then they use that to aid Ukraine. That's how they are helping to fund their Ukraine aid, and that's sustainable. That can keep going. Those and if the EU have said, right, we've now indefinitely frozen these things, we don't have to keep voting on it, then awesome. You can just keep having the profits, and it could get to a point that if you'd given those frozen Russian assets to Ukraine at the beginning of the war, and they would have just spanked them all. If you compare that to the amount of profits generated from those assets over like a 7-year war or something like that, I don't know how long this war is going to go on. It could be that actually the creaming off the profits ends up generating more income over the lifetime than the initial assets themselves. But I don't know. I mean, that's just wild speculation. But I could conceive of that being a possibility. So I don't know. I don't know when they'll get used. I mean, it depends how desperate things get in terms of Europe saying we can support you, we're going to be here for you forever, we'll stand with you. But at some point they're going to be like, this is really costing us a lot of money, and Russia still suck, so let's give it to them. So but I don't know, it's a difficult one to answer that. Okay, lots of questions coming in, but I'm going to get back to this. So we have the AFU, as mentioned in the German section, 200 Ukrainian Bogdanas being made, but using the German Zetro chassis now. And that's one of these, I guess, mutually beneficial setups where they're making a Bogdana. So Germans, like, you know, the Ukrainians are going to say, right, we can make 40 Bogdanas a month. That was the last we heard. It was something around 40 Bogdanas, although that was both the towed and the self-propelled versions, right? And Germany can either say, okay, here's a bunch of money to make more of those yourselves. You need the money to reach your capacity. Or Germany can say, hey, we'll give you an absolute ton of money to help you build those. But by the way, you've got to build them on the German Zetro chassis. Then that makes Germany money in terms of building the chassis, and it stimulates their economy. And then you send that to Ukraine, and Ukraine put a gun on it, and everyone's happy. And that's kind of the best of both worlds. So I can imagine that being a preferred option. Now, we've heard that the Shilka are being updated. So the Shilka, these are like the Gepard, but the Soviet version, and probably not quite as good as a Gepard, I would have thought. I don't know. That's just me intuitively thinking that. They are apparently being done up by the Ukrainians to upgrade them so that they are better able to operate in the way that they want them. 5 out of 16 of these modernized Shilka air defense systems are here in this image. Hopefully the innovations will bring the outdated systems back into service and make them effective again. I think they are still in service. They're probably not very good. I don't know, more maybe not. Maybe as they've been given Gepards, they've moved the crews from these onto the Gepards that had a greater capability, but these have been sitting around waiting for something to happen to them, and now they're having a bunch of their systems being updated. So I can't remember exactly what they're working on here. The Back-End Alive Foundation has modernized 16 Shilka air defense systems for the National Guard. What was upgraded? Outdated radar detection stations were replaced with modern multifunctional ones. The analog fire control computing systems were replaced with digital one, and the navigation system converters and additional modern components were installed. As a result, target processing time was reduced from 18 seconds to 0.2 seconds. Wow. Okay. That makes a difference. Maximum detection range more than doubled. Previously, the Shilka could only track one target at a time. Now it can track up to 20 simultaneously. Now, that's the kind of updating that you're going to want. So that sounds really very useful. And then suddenly you got 16 air defense systems that are going to be operating probably not as well as the Gepards, but, you know, you put them around Odessa right now. You put 16 Shilkas around Odessa, and suddenly those Shaheds aren't getting through so easily. And they have been wreaking havoc on the bridges around Odessa at the moment. So there you go. Good news there. I'm sorry, so many of you have probably got really good questions and comments here, but I'm on my own today. So yeah. No, I've not seen this. Says Stephen Bode. Have you seen the Jimmy Kimmel post on Trump selling weapons to Russia? I think his comments are based on a CIA report. Oh God, that's my worst nightmare. That's something that I've been hoping would never happen. And if that is happening, no, it can't be happening. But nothing surprises me these days. It would probably bring me to cry in a corner in a gibbering mess. Yes, I talked about this last time. So JD1819 said, did you see the new 2026 US defense bill? Congress approved military budget. So this is the NDAA, the National Defense Authorization Act, and the 2026 to 2027 budget has been approved, which in it has $400 million of aid to Ukraine. And I think in general, like $800 million over 2 years or something. Anyway, the Congress have worked, and I think fairly explicitly, against the national security strategy of the American Trump administration. So they brought out this national security strategy written by a couple of people, Andy Baker, probably Stephen Miller, and a guy called, forget his name. I told you the other day, there was some other dude. I was speaking about him with Jonathan Fink, and there was something else that came out about him. Let's bring it up here. Let's get that on here. So sorry about this, guys. So Michael Anton. God, I've got things everywhere. I've never heard of Michael Anton, says Jessica Simon KC, so legal person. Thought it was all Stephen Miller. Seems there are many race-obsessed monsters fighting to destroy freedom and democracy through narratives of hate, paranoia, victimhood, superiority, and fear. Americans need to visit the wonderful Europe. Okay, Nick Cohen here says the author of the national security strategy that committed the US to aiding the far right in Europe is a race-obsessed, hysteric, and paranoid fantasist. Piece from me on why America is not our friend, says Nick Cohen. So this is Michael Anton, an American fanatic. He apparently is a guy that wrote, look, CPAC Hungary. That's the sort of guy this is, you know, in the Conservative conference in Hungary, giving it a big chat, big fan of Orban, that kind of stuff. Him, Andy Baker, Stephen Miller, peas in a pod. These guys wrote the national security strategy, which is essentially a kind of ethno-nationalist approach to international diplomacy. And Congress don't like that, or the sensible people in Congress who have been like in politics for a long time saying, you're taking the US in a really dangerous and horrible direction that we do not like. We know that Ukraine need to be supported. We know that Europe the European nations are our allies, and they are not our adversaries. And yet the national security strategies come out and said Europe sucks, China, nah, Russia, nay, and etc. etc. You're like, okay, so you're not mentioned democracy 3 times. First time on page 14 in national security strategy. Just ridiculously horrific document. And Congress has stood up and said, no, we're gonna authorize this budget for the Department of Defense, and in it is going to be, it is not just $400 million of aid to Ukraine in 2026, but also stipulates in there, I believe, that Trump is not unilaterally allowed to pull troops out of Europe, is not unilaterally allowed to pull materiel out of Europe. In a way that they have been subtly doing. They pulled an entire cavalry division, haven't they, out of Romania, and that's why they've offered all the Stryker vehicles to Poland for $1, because they don't want to take them all back to the US, because that costs a load, and they're kind of phasing them out. So get rid of the Stryker, but that's them pulling out of Europe, and the idea that they want eventually a European military leader to be in charge of NATO in Europe, which might sound very sensible to people. But if the US wants to be as powerful as it is in the world and have people to dance to its tune, then they need to have the SACEUR, the NATO leader in Europe, being American. Otherwise, they just give up on the European defense. Oh, brilliant. That's great. Go and isolate yourselves. Okay. But then you will have no power. You will have no say in what happens in Europe. So that's the tension. So you get the kind of Michael Anton position is going to be like, we want to isolate, but we want to carve up the world between these big empires. And then you get Europe going, hang on, we were mates previously. What are you doing now? Yeah, you should stand up on your own 2 feet. You need to spend more on your defense. And then Europe goes, okay, we're going to do that. And then the US goes, oh, you guys also need to do this. And then Europe goes, well, you can sod off, because we don't need to do what you say anymore, because you told us to stand up on our own 2 feet. So we are. So we're spending more on defense. We're doing that. And do you know where we're spending that money? We're spending it in Europe. And I take you back to Emmanuel Macron earlier. Where are we? Here, he was here somewhere. Where are you, Macron? Oh, I've lost him. Anyway, I'll take you back to he's gone. Oh, here he is. Emmanuel Macron saying we're going to give 90 billion euros to Ukraine, but by the way, you've got to spend all that money in Europe. And meanwhile, American military industrial concern is going, no, this sucks. What's going on? And then they're going to go and complain to the Trump administration, and the Trump administration has people like, you know, Michael Anton going, yeah, but Europe sucks, and these guys are like, yeah, but we make loads of money out of Europe, and you're like, and you got this big tension. So you got the tension between kind of the old school political establishment and this kind of isolationist wing that's both isolationist plus expansionist. We want to isolate from our allies, but we want to then we want to go and take over our allies in Canada, in Greenland, and in Panama, and then it's all just, yeah. So that's what we're seeing. But anyway, thank you for saying that. But JD 1819, but indeed, that was, I think, a very pointed budgetary sign off there. That was against the American Trump administration positioning. So I think it should be read in that context. Right. Okay. Sorry, I digressed again. Okay. Final section. Russia. What are they doing? Hopefully, are these all rendered? Yes. Just randomly sometimes don't. So Geo Insider says leaked internal documents from Russia's Alabuga Special Economic Zone. So this is the area that makes the Shahed drones that needs to be bombed into oblivion. These needs to be bombed into the upside down world in Stranger Things. Just taken out. Leaked internal documents from Russia's Alabuga Special Economic Zone, analyzed by the Molfar Intelligence Institute, indicate that Moscow has been testing and upgrading Shahed drones outside Russia, including in Kazakhstan and potentially Turkey. Whoa. The documents show the use of European and tourist SIM cards, 4G modems, and trackers to improve navigation, telemetry, resistance to electronic warfare, and post-strike data collection. According to Molfar, this testing may help explain the unexplained drone overflights reported across multiple European countries in recent months, particularly near strategic and military sites. The findings suggest Russia is adapting its drones to operate across foreign telecom networks, not only for use in Ukraine, but potentially for broader operational environments. Now, this is actually a really bloody important part of this video. And I hadn't realized this, so this is kind of me spitballing. But this morning, and I've got this for tomorrow's hits and losses video, it came out that Turkey has shot down a Russian drone right over Turkey, right over like Western Turkey, like a long way from Russia. And they shot a drone. Like if I go on to Blue Sky now, let's just bring this up quickly, just so you know I'm not talking absolute pants. Okay, so this is Blue Sky, blah, 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 blah. We're going to come down to some drones that have been shot down over Turkey this morning. News of this morning. Where are you, you gets? I know you're here. Sorry to flash all this, but here we go. So 3 Russian reconnaissance drones were found near Turkey's Bosphorus and Dardanelles Strait in 5 days, with an Orlan-10 crashing in Kocaeli on December the 19th and a Merlin VR in Balıkesir on December the 20th, after Turkey reported downing an unidentified drone on December the 15th. Okay, so then you start piecing this stuff together, and you're like, so Molfar have just found out that that Alabuga is, you know, ordering lots of SIM cards or whatever from these different countries, Kazakhstan and Turkey being mentioned here. Like the Russians plan to buy these SIM cards either for testing or for use on Shahed drones in 2024. Analysts at the Molfar Intelligence Institute obtained a scan table listing mobile operators in Germany, Czechia, Belgium, France, and Ukraine, along with a number of SIM cards, their unit prices, and the main terms of their of each plan. Okay, and then Turkey's also mentioned, and you've had all these drones flying around Belgium, flying around Scandinavia, Germany, etc., France. They are testing their drones to see whether they can use them and can piggyback on, I guess, the mobile networks in these countries. And then if it's proof of concept, then it means, well, we can then operate Shahed drones or any other kind of strike drones or whatever drones we want inside these countries, potentially from bloody miles away. So, according to the investigation, Russian engineers tested Shahed drones using SIM cards from European mobile operators to study signal stability, flight correction, data transmission, and how drones behave inside foreign telecom environments. This allows Russia to map air defense reactions, electronic warfare interference zones, and network vulnerabilities beyond Ukraine. Molfar notes that the list of SIM card countries used for testing closely overlaps with countries that later reported unidentified drone overflights near military bases, ports, and critical infrastructure. It's also worth recalling that downed Russian drones, including Iranian-made Shahed drones and Russian Gerberas, were previously found containing Polish and Lithuanian SIM cards. Call it systematic testing of Europe's digital and air defense environment. So when they sent those drones over into Poland, and it was all very controversial, that could have just been very much just a test, a proof of concept test. Like, we're not really challenging Poland here. We're not really trying to push the envelope, although that can all be part of it. Actually, we're just testing whether we can use these drones and steer them and control them as they go across Poland. And we can. Awesome, I assume. And yet they've all been shot down, and everyone's like gone on nuts. And then NATO have got all up in arms, and they've I don't know, said that we're going to start doing this and shooting down that. But actually, we've found all we need to know, which is we can operate Shaheds in Poland. So just you wait, guys. If it comes to it, we can throw a whole bunch of Shaheds into your countries. What are you going to do about it? So. Yeah, Russia hit Odessa region with modified Shahed drones equipped with factory-installed thermal cameras for remote targeting. Militiani has reported, noting Moscow previously bolted cameras externally, but now integrates the cameras inside the Shahed drones for better aerodynamics. So they're consistently upgrading these machines, aren't they? Greater payloads, greater capabilities in terms of imaging, and then being able to control them like glorified FPV drones. DPRK, so North Korea participation in the war continues. Ammunition supplies continues, says the GUR, the military intelligence. Kirilo Budanov himself noted that the share of North Korean ammunition in the Russian war remains at 40 to 50%, and these supplies are regular. They did stop supplying for some time, and then they kicked up again, and it looks like they are just regularly supplying Russia with artillery ammunition to the tune of 40 to 50%. Wow. Okay. Turkey. Yeah, just seeing what you're saying in the live chat here. So yeah, similar sorts of conversations going on. Turkey is seeking to return the Russian S-400 air defense system it bought nearly a decade ago, aiming to repair ties with the US and rejoin the F-35 fighter jet program. So this sucks in a way, but is understandable in another way, and is good for NATO. So what happened is Turkey wanted to buy F-16s and F-35s, and the US rightly said you can't buy F-16s and F-35s because you just bought a bunch of S-400 air defense systems, so you can't use them because there's no way you're going to have a NATO, especially top of the range NATO planes operating, and then operate the nemesis to these, which is the Russian S-400 system, and then you can tell Russia exactly how to shoot down F-35s because you can war game this, and you can work out, you got the tech of both sides, and you can work out how to shoot down the F-35s and F-16s as well as possible with S-400s. So you cannot use S-400s. So Turkey agreed not to use the S-400s, and I think they were mothballed without ever having been properly used, if I'm correct. And then the US finally said you can have F-16s recently, and they're hoping to get F-35s, and they've said that they are going to give back the S-400s now. Now, the problem here is that's good for NATO, so you're not going to have S-400s and F-35s and F-16s, but it means you're going to give back some S-400s to Russia. It'd be nice if you can give them to Turkey, to Ukraine. Thank you very much. Erdogan raised the issue with Putin last week, though the Kremlin denies any such request. You can bet your bottom dollar that Putin would be like, please, 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 please give us those S-400s. Please give us those S-400s. We really, really want them. Okay, Russian military, and I reported this earlier today. This sucks if it's true. the Russian military deployed a Chinese laser system, a laser air defense system on the border against Ukrainian drones. Miliciani said that it was handed over to the Kovchenviki Kochevniki unit for testing, which confirmed the effectiveness of the laser installation, allegedly destroying, quote, hundreds of Ukrainian drones. Now, if that is true, pinch of salt and all that, that is a massive challenge because Russia have joined in with the laser drone air defense group now that includes Ukraine themselves, have supposedly made their own, the UK one, Dragonfire, which I think sounds like it's the one that's most ahead of the game. The British one, it was the one that was announced first. Then you had South Koreans announcing it, Americans announcing it, Ukrainians themselves, but I don't know whether they were piggybacking on the back of the UK Dragonfire, because the UK said they were going to get that to Ukraine straight away type thing. And there's been an update to the Dragonfire UK one, so that's why I say they're ahead of the game, because they're the most recent to have given us public information on how they've really improved it, and it can now take out things that are moving really quickly, acquire loads of targets, and so on and so forth. Hit a 10p piece at a kilometer, and it can and it costs initially it was like it costs £1 to fire. I think the last was £10 to fire. I mean, I don't know how much these cost in R&D and to buy, but certainly repeated use, it just requires power. Like, all you need is just enough power on a ship. Usually they're designed to be put on ships at the moment in the UK. You just need enough power to fire these bad boys, and they can shoot down these drones with consummate ease or relative ease. Now, if Russia has genuinely developed one of these, well, no, sorry, if China has genuinely developed one of these, which almost certainly they have, and they've got it to the Russians, and the Russians are using it, and it's been really successful in shooting down a load of drones, then that could also be a reason why the Ukrainians are losing quite a lot of drones every night flying into Russia. It could also be a bunch of arse. It could just be a load of PR bollocks that doesn't track with reality. You never know with the Russians. Yeah, power's what's being degraded daily in Ukraine. I don't know. So on board a ship, you're going to be producing probably enough power. It depends what kind of ship and what kind of power. If you've got a small nuclear reactor, then you've got no trouble at all. I don't know how. Wes O'Donnell did a really good video on this, and he talked about the power drainage that was required. So go and check out Wes O'Donnell's video on the Dragonfire that was only about 2 weeks ago. It's a really recent one, 3 weeks ago maybe, and he gives a lot more information about that. So well worth checking out. Yeah, but Wes O'Donnell's recent one, I know it's initially 10 pence. I almost said 10p, and then I said a quid. But in his video, he said £10. So I don't know if that's the upgraded version that requires a bit more power because it can do more, and I don't know. I think it can damage the drones more possibly as well. So they might have upped the power, which is why it would cost more. Yes. So I believe, Michael, that the new upgrade for the Dragonfire, the UK one, could overcome some of stuff like this, if I remember correctly, but I may be wrong. Maybe rain could be a bit of an issue for it, and fog, but I thought they had overcome that. So anyway, check that out. As I say, Wes O'Donnell's done a good video on that. Right, okay. So 2 new variants of the Russian Molniya 2 drone include a mine-laying type. This allows carrying heavy anti-tank mines, such as the TM62 or the PTM3. It remains to be seen whether the landmines can be placed as usefully as the precision placement of Ukrainian heavy drones. Nonetheless, the Molniya here, or the Molniya 2 in this case, the Molniya is one that's almost made of plywood, fixed-wing drone that has those 2 kind of tails coming out the back. This is a Molniya 2. Certainly a big upgrade to the Molniya short-range drone system. So as well, the reconnaissance variant of the Molniya 2, the Molniya 2R, has a gimbaled camera and a Starlink satellite antenna. This gives secure communication and control, and with immunity to radio electronic warfare jamming. So that's a bit of a challenge for the Ukrainians there. Here's ammonia, actually, but at the back here, and I told you recently that I've seen one with Starlink on it. This is the picture I was talking about. So this is a Starlink from Elon Musk placed on ammonia drone here. Well, I wonder if that's ammonia 2, actually. Seems a bit more substantial than the ammonia one. Anyway, oh yeah, it is ammonia 2. There you go. I should read first before I start wanging on about nonsense. Russian ammonia 2 kamikaze drones with continuous Starlink control are spreading fast, the military reports. Yeah, that is, again, frustrating. I'm sure that's something that Elon Musk could stop if he really wanted to. Okay, a 50-kilometer fiber optic cable spool from Russia's 123rd Motorized Rifle Brigade. And we've seen this before, right? Nothing unusual, the 50-kilometer spools, but they seem to be becoming more and more common, which is a shame, because that means that these fiber optics are already very challenging for the Ukrainians, challenging for both sides, but Russia seemed to get the upper hand with fiber optics initially, at least, producing pretty well. We saw some factory footage the other day, my last military aid update, I think, of a Chinese factory that is a Chinese-Japanese, I think, co-production, and they could produce, how many spools was it, a night in a single shift? They are producing bajillions of spools for drones on a monthly basis, and that is scary. And of course, 50-kilometer spools are now probably 10 a penny. Okay, in other words, there are lots of them. So as someone says here, again, BTKB, fiber optic spools are really cheap and easy to make. I've done that as part of my PhD, where I made fibers. It's very cheap and easy, yet sadly enough. And then when you add Chinese manufacturing tech into that, I'm sure you can scale that up to just stupendous amounts. Just to remind you guys, if you haven't already, please like, subscribe, and share. It does make a difference to the channel. Also, it helps you keep in the loop. So please, if you haven't subscribed, I implore you to do so, or just politely, please remember to do so. That would be very kind. Now, Russia has failed to find funding to help to build a chip manufacturing plant in Tatarstan. For several years, Element, a Russian microelectronics holding, had been developing plans to construct a factory with the Innopolis Special Economic Zone, within the Innopolis Special Economic Zone, but it hasn't been able to do so. Money is tight, and that is a good thing for Ukraine. So that's a good sign from inside Russia. Roy here says there's been a surge in Russian use of Starlink antennas. Yeah, again, going back, sorry, I should have had this earlier. Expensive antennas have been placed on ultra-cheap Molniya 2 drones configured for reconnaissance missions. Now Russian armored vehicles are being seen sporting the distinctive white rectangle shape of the Starlink. And yeah, going back to that image of the Molniya 2R. Starlink terminals used by Russians are obtained by volunteers and shipped across Russia's southern land borders. However, they are vulnerable to disruption by Starlink itself, which periodically disables terminals located in Russian-held territory by Ukrainian hackers. And I did a thread on that this morning. I didn't read the whole of it, but there's a really good, long Chriso Wiki thread to give you details of how Russians use Starlinks and how they have been hacked by Ukrainians, and the challenges that the Russians themselves have in using them. Now, as I've said to you before, Russia has launched a mercenary recruitment plan in Iraq, offering $20,000 signing bonus and $2,000 monthly via Telegram, as in not the payment, but the recruitment PR has been done via Telegram, targeting economically vulnerable populations as part of a campaign that recruited 18,000 foreigners from 128 countries, Ukraine's Disinformation Center reports. Okay, this is one of my big worries for Ukraine, is Russia's ability to recruit people from abroad when Ukraine are struggling to recruit people themselves. I think this needs to be, something needs to be done about this, but I don't know what you can do about this. People are easily going to be attracted by wages that give them social mobility, even if there is a risk involved, but they probably don't know the true risk of joining the front lines in the war against Ukraine. And at the same time, here we have, and this one video's done the rounds. I haven't fact checked this, but no one seems to have come up against this. This is a video purporting to show what's supposed to be 10,000 Indians that have turned up in Russia as this labor contingent that was agreed upon when Putin was recently in India meeting with Modi. Russian media report that approximately 10,000 individuals, a labor contingent from India, have arrived in Moscow. This is the first group of Indians who arrived following Putin's recent visits in New Delhi. I wonder how many of them will be deployed to the front line and how soon. Now, I have said to you before, sorry to repeat myself, but I see all of these as soldiers, even if none of them go to the front line, because it's a case of the labor shortage and the labor market being in tension with the mobilization targets and mobilization and conscription numbers. And where Russia might be struggling to get soldiers on the front line, that's because the labor market has been quite tight, although there are also wages coming down. I mean, there are so many things going on with the Russian economy at the moment. This might not be wholly correct as of now because of all the economic challenges, but essentially, if you have a labor shortage, then it drives up the wages, which means it's actually more attractive to stay working in a factory than it is to get these what are otherwise really good wages. Supposedly, depends where they actually pay them, and then signing on bonuses and going to fight on the front lines. So actually, you're like, well, there's a risk to kind of do that. And to be honest, like, wages are really going up in Russia because there's been this massive labor shortage because everyone's been sent to the front lines, and then Russia's struggling to send people to the front lines. Then if you get a massive influx of cheap labor from India, then that depresses, that cools the labor market, and then suddenly it's more attractive to go and fight on the front lines at what the army is paying and the bonuses, although they are coming down as well. So I mean, Russia's struggling all over. But broader point is that 10,000 Indians being sent, if none of them go to the front line and they all work in industry or whatever in Russia, then that allows Russia to more likely mobilize more Russians into the armed forces. And so it's like two sides of a square there. So this is a real challenge for the Ukrainians. And then we hear, and in fact, is it this one? Yes. Dozens of janitors from India have arrived in St. Petersburg. The first team of workers arrived back in September. It's reported that some of them previously worked as IT developers in their home country. These workers are reportedly paid around $1,240 US, I guess, a month. So yeah, that you really are seeing Indian work, an Indian labor contingent hit Russia at the moment. And that's going to cause some interesting tensions in the workplaces, in society. I think Russia are famously pretty ultra nationalistic and not so welcoming of brown-skinned people. And so I think undoubtedly there will be some challenges there, culturally and socially speaking, but yeah, this is definitely a worry for I think the front lines. And indeed, Kiev Independent reports that the ministry has said, I don't know which ministry, foreign ministry, India's foreign ministry, has said 202 Indian citizens have been recruited by Russia to fight in the war against Ukraine over the course of the war since 2022. 202 Indian nationals have been recruited, with at least 26 of them being killed and 7 are missing, according to India's foreign ministry. Now, you know that'll be a drop in the ocean compared to the reality. I'm pretty sure that will be. So way more than that. But again, you know, you've got two sides of the coin here, which is, or two elements to this, which is Indians going into fight for Russia against Ukraine, and Indians going into the labor force to then release other Russians to fight against Ukraine. None of this is good news for Ukraine at all. So there you go. That's what I have to say about that. Right. Okay. Sorry, just looking at some of the live chat that's going on. Just to sort of wrap things up, it is obviously I'm going to talk to you about the car for Ukraine. I just want it's Christmas, right? I'm not wearing my Christmas jumper. You hear the same old Christmas songs every year. I just want to throw another Christmas song your way that I absolutely love. Thea Gilmore, sort of alternative rock, country, a bit folky. Sorry, not country, sort of folk rock. She's cool, Thea Gilmore, British singer songwriter. She released about 15 years ago a winter album called Strange Communion. There's an outright Christmas song called That'll Be Christmas, which I think you should all listen to because it's fantastic. And I don't know why that is not an absolute bog standard, run of the mill on every CD. You don't have CDs anymore. Every advert, this should be a Christmas song among all the top Christmas songs. Thea Gilmore, That'll Be Christmas is a great song. And on that same album, Thea Gilmore's Cold Coming. I love that song. It's kind of a wintry song. Strange Communion is a winter album. It's like it's sort of Christmassy winter album that she did. But yeah, Cold Coming and That'll Be Christmas. I think you should all go and listen to. So this is my hint for you. Make of that what you will. And I then want to remind you that atpgeo.com/donate is out there. We are at the moment raising money for the Christmas truck campaign, Christmas Tree Trucks 2025, ATP Geopolitics. We are now over 1,400 spondoolies. That is amazing. We've jumped up today. We've just finished our one for Jigger's Paw, which is, you guys are absolutely amazing. And we're starting one for Car for Ukraine. I'm going to get these 2 patches for sure, and that patch. And the pins aren't on here. I don't know if they don't do the pins anymore. I've got these beautiful pins on my. Let me show you this. I don't know. They might not be doing them anymore. But these pins are lush. Let's show you there. So the silver drone pin that you can see. There's a war truck, a one that's got. Sorry, I'm trying to work out left and right here. That with a little machine gun on the back. Then there's a fire with the trident in the middle, and that's one for like medevacs and whatnot. And there's a 5th pin that I don't have at the moment that I need to see if Ivan can give me. And I sent Ivan a message just before from Car for Ukraine, just before I came on live, and he says, "Hello, Jonathan. Happy to ship you the missing pin and the patch you want for sure." I was obviously going to donate to the campaign as well. Damn, that didn't work. Oh dear. So anyway, that's that. Going back to you guys, because you are all total legends. Papa Dutch, thank you to Niels Clement again, or Clement, I never know, bit French pronunciation or not. Papa Dutch, if any Russian can travel to China, then have access to Hong Kong and not only the international market, but lots of local fakes. I'm not sure what that's in relation to, though, Papa Dutch, but thank you very much for the super chat. I used to live in Hong Kong, fun fact. So, yeah, I don't know where that was going. Wizard of Ooze, there once was a Pompey supporter. For his sins, JP never wins in that quarter. But supporting Ukraine is never a pain. Just like, subscribe, and donate as you ought to. That's brilliant. I love a good limerick. I used to make limericks up when I was a kid. And when I was at school, of course, I'd be rude. But yeah, Pompey support. I support Portsmouth Football Club. It's my local team. And they are, Portsmouth are called Pompey. Play up, Pompey, Pompey, play up. There once was a Pompey supporter. For us, since JP never wins in that quarter. But supporting Ukraine is never a pain. Just like, subscribe, and donate as you ought to. Good man. I like what you've done there. Papa Dutch, after taxes, $2 is the modern my 2 cents. Thank you very much, Papa Dutch. And you are such a strong supporter of the channel as well. To Mitch Ashdown replying to him, 2 loonies. I wish the Ukrainian stock market was on the international exchanges again. Screw the personal financial risk. Ukraine must grow. It's just interesting as well to think about. And here's the thing. Here, as a good point, actually, Papa Dutch, and to all of you, please don't leave yet. It's probably a bit late now, but it's never too late at all. if you want to give a gift to a friend, a family member, I guess if you can try and get a gift, and I probably didn't think about this enough. Well, I'm going to going forward. I mean, I try and buy wine from Mark at the little whiskey shop, Ukrainian wine. He sells Ukrainian vodka as well, Dima's vodka. In fact, there's that book there, just there, which is, I think, written by someone associated with Dima, of Dima's vodka. And I think he might sell that book. I don't know. Anyway, Mark at little whiskey shop sells, which is British shop, and he's often in the live chat. He sells Ukrainian wine. But if you can buy Ukrainian stuff, you know, particularly if it's made in Ukraine, you know, go and look online, see what you can get from Ukraine, and just help out their economy. Then that's going to help, I guess, more than just buying some tat from China or wherever. Like, and that gift or that aid comes then with a lot more meaning, doesn't it? And it makes it, I think, more thoughtful right across the thinking that you might do. So yeah, just don't forget that Ukraine probably has an awful lot of lovely gifts that can be obtained. I mean, I've got a whole bunch of stuff that Pierre has got me over time. I've got you see that as a lit up railway sign. And it's all the railways that were operating, I think, stopped at the beginning of the war. I love that. I've got like some friendship bracelets. I've got as a NAFO car registration thing. There's the postcard there which says it's of that stamp of Russian warship, go F yourself. I've got Mark and Elena, and I need to wear my Vyshyvanka again. I must do that this week. I might do that tomorrow. And a woman's scarf there as well that they sent. So lots of Ukrainian paraphernalia. We've got a candle there that I was sent by, thank you, with my key ring as well. And that up there, you probably can't see it very easily. How do I send my finger? No, there is a grenade canister with a sticker on it, which is from the charity that Pete the medic, Peter Fouché, he was involved in that, or started that, or involved with it. And he gave me that when I was out there, when I met Pete, and sadly he's passed away now. But anyway, yeah, I love a bit of Ukrainian paraphernalia, but there are so many things that I'm sure you could buy gifts for friends and family. Pierre was here earlier. Oh, was he? Was he in the live chat? Oh, good stuff. Okay. Yeah, and this is a really good, what the Sarah World says, I'm avoiding spending money so I can donate. Yeah, that is a very valid point though, as well too. I guess it's, if you're going to get a gift from Ukraine. Although I haven't done that myself, and because I wasn't thinking, and that's really annoying. I should have thought more. So I think next year will be I'll be thinking of that more. Okay, right. Thank you, Project Constantine. Yeah, my brain's going really mental today. Project Constantine, thank you. Okay, just reading all these live chats. ATPGEO.com/donate for the Car for Ukraine campaign. ATPGEO.com/UK petition to sign a petition to get UK forces over in the west of Ukraine and helping with sort of logistics and defense and whatnot, but in the west, not on the front lines, etc., etc. Thank you very much to everyone. Thank you so much to those who are members of the channel and who have supported with super chats and whatnot. Thank you here to the pirate who says, please hit like, subscribe. It's free. 100k is near. Thank you very much, mate. And Papa Dutch says, give a man a fish. I'd rather see him set up a local bait shop, actually. Very well said, my friend. Thank you, Papa Dutch. Thank you to all the very generous donators. Wizard of Ooze, Niels Clement, BTKB, Stephen Bendal, Kevin Forst, and Richard Bennett. You are all wonderful human beings, and the pirate as well. Take care, everybody, and Slava Ukraini. Oh, US has seized another tanker, someone says in the live chat. That's something for me to go and find out about. Take care. Speak to you soon.